Folks, it looks like Will Wade is staying put for at least 2 more days.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your co-hosts for today. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Schade, coming to you after the first full day of games. This is my favorite time of the year, Thursday through Sunday, when the bracket goes from 64 teams to 16 teams. It is an absolute blast. We had a fantastic first day of action. Folks, want to thank all of you for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Remind you that you can check out this show ad-free on Amazon Music, and give a special shout out to the everydayers. Those of you who were with us from the opening tip from Gonzaga Baylor way back on November 4th until now, we appreciate every single one of you, and those of you hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord channel. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. If you need one now, grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery store or convenience store. Stock up today and stay energized. And Isaac, we are going to probably need some
lots of those
energy as we get through what is going to be an incredible busy slate of games the next couple of days. We had a blast, though, on Thursday. Only 3 lower seeded teams won. There were 16 games. 13 of those 16 games were won by the higher seeded team, which you may think, oh, that kind of sounds like maybe it wasn't that interesting of a slate of games, but that's not how we felt. There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of really strong performances, some dominant performances from teams we maybe didn't expect to play so well. And then even some of the mid-major teams and the lower-seeded teams that lost, they put up really valiant efforts. Looking at you, the Tritons of UC San Diego nearly pulling one off against Michigan. We had some other really fun games as well. We're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about the John Calipari-Bill Self battle, which was a very fun game in the evening time on Thursday. Some dominant wins for Gonzaga and Creighton, plus a quick look ahead to some games on Friday and Saturday. Tons to get to today. But Isaac, we got to start with the lowest seeded upset that we saw on Thursday. And it was a game that is going to look, to those of you who maybe didn't watch this thing all the way through, you're going to see that McNeese beat Clemson by 2 points. You're going to think, wow, shout out Will Wade. Maybe, he got a buzzer beater, or maybe a valiant comeback by them. That's not what happened at all. McNeese was up 31-13 at halftime of this game against the Clemson Tigers. It was an insane Herculean effort by Brad Brownell's team to get back into this game and nearly pull off what would have been a remarkable comeback, but would have ended the upset for McNeese. Instead, Will Wade's Cowboys managed to hold on. He gets a win over his alma mater. He gets a win against a team in the conference, the ACC, that he's going to join next year when he takes over at NC State, but he ain't heading over there now. He's got a couple more days to stay with this McNeese team. Isaac, what an incredibly fun game we got from the Cowboys and Clemson here on Thursday.
Yeah, Andy, to put a little number on what you said about Clemson's ending there, which this is pretty impressive if we're being honest. 38 points in the final 7:45. What? They were sitting at 29 with 8 minutes to go, 7:45 minutes to go, and finished with 67. I mean, they were just pouring it on. To be fair, like McNeese had been poured on, and they really struggled down the stretch, if we're being honest, with situational awareness, like time and score. Maybe I shouldn't throw this lob up. Maybe I shouldn't pull up on this transition 3. Maybe I shouldn't throw a full court pass up over everybody. Just things like that. That's like probably a more disciplined team would handle. If McNeese does this again on Saturday against, I can't even remember who they're playing. Purdue. Yeah. They're going to perdon't their way home out of that one, Andy. It's going to be really bad. But man, what a win. The first one in program history. Andy, I wrote this little summary for myself because I was trying to remember all these storylines, and here it is. Will Wade beats his alma mater, Clemson, for McNeese's first ever NCAA tournament victory and delays his already announced departure to another school by at least 2 more days, while the manager is the most big storyline out of this entire thing. That was like 37 storylines wrapped up in one sentence. This is a beautifully packaged game. Just a little morsel gift from the college basketball gods to you and I on this first day of the tournament. It's so great. And Andy, may we just take a moment to do a thing?
Do it.
You and I need to apologize to the good people of these United States of America and anyone tuning in and watching around the world or on the Armed Services Network or whatever that thing is when they tune in, the national championship.
Yes.
There's all the people cheering from Afghanistan or whatever, right? We need to apologize to all of you, because if you listen to us at all, and you know what, Andy, I'm not going to speak for you. I will fervently own this. I over and over and over again said, do not be silly. Do not be fooled into this 12-5 upset. You should stick with Clemson like everything depends on it. Go with Clemson. And Andy, these poor people, is like leading lambs to the slaughter, Mr. Patton. And folks, we apologize for doing that to you all. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah. No, it was a rough day for the ACC. Not only did Clemson, of course, get upset here by McNeese, we saw Louisville go down to Creighton. Big performance from Creighton, but North Carolina now has the only NCAA tournament win up to date. For the,
of course they do, right? Of course, that's how it is.
Of course, right? Yeah, that's what we totally all would have expected, right? Just like NC State going to the Final Four last year. Obviously, that's what we all thought was going to happen. What a crazy conference. But yeah, no, this storyline with Will Wade leaving McNeese, but now still staying at McNeese. It's a product of the new era of college basketball where teams are absolutely fervently trying to make sure that they have their head coach in place by March 24th when the transfer portal opens. They don't want to lose players to the portal. They don't want they want to be able to recruit immediately in that transfer portal. And so I don't think, again, that NC State was like, well, really hope you lose McNeese, but at the same time, they want to get Will Wade in. They want to get him a picture of him in their uniform or in the NC State gear. They want to get him a press conference. They want to get him out there saying hey, this is what we want to do, because they want to maintain their talent and they want to go out and get new talent. And now they're in a position where, I think they want to see their soon to be coach succeed. But at the same time, if McNeese beats Purdue, which, again, the way, as you said, the way they played at the end of this game, they're probably not going to beat Purdue unless they find a way to rally the troops again. But if they do, Will Wade's not going to be the coach at NC State when the transfer portal opens, or he's going to leave and it's going to be a complete dumpster fire, which I think is extremely unlikely. So just a weird product of the way that college basketball works now with the transfer portal and the timing of the NCAA tournament. Just another wonky thing that makes college basketball so delightfully frustrating and also the absolute best.
Andy, you mentioned the halftime score there. At halftime, it was Brandon Murray, McNeese bench player 14, Clemson 13. The chef had 0 points. Yeah. Chase Hunter had 0 points, despite him getting 21 in the second half. Just a weird game. I still am trying to figure out Clemson, what are we doing? What are we talking about? No, Andy, we've so much that we've just talked about this game. We got to get to Drake and Mizzou, because while we need to apologize for the former game, we would like to take our victory lap on this one, Andy, because also, if you listen to us all this week and lead up to the tournament starting, we were all in on Drake over Mizzou. We were all in on Bennett Sturts. We were all in on all of this. Ben McCollum, the whole thing, their head coach. Andy, what this D2 storyline of Ben McCollum coming in to take over for Darren DeVries, who's off to West Virginia and now Indiana, from the D2 ranks, bringing along Bennett Sturts, 3 other D2 players with it. Bennett Sturts is the leading scorer. He comes in and just has the game we were looking for until Mizzou was like, we're going to shut this homie down. And then other dudes stepped up and did it. Drake survived Mizzou's punches late and get this win. And it is what a story it crazily is. Way to go, Drake. Great stuff there. Andy, what do you take away from this game?
There's quite a few parallels between these two games, not just the fact that the two teams that lost were power conference teams named the Tigers, although that is one of the parallels, but the fact that Mizzou and Clemson both kind of staged comebacks to try to get back into these games after going down early. But the difference was that McNeese was way farther ahead of Clemson. And when Clemson was making their run, McNeese never really countered it. Like you said, Drake got punched and punched back. McNeese kind of just kept taking the punches because they had a big enough lead that they could. And they just watched as Clemson got as close as humanly possible to pulling off that comeback win. And for what happened in this game, Missouri started to make their comeback. They made the adjustments. They started shutting down Sturts. And Drake didn't panic. They made some mistakes. They had the guy who tried to take the 3-point shot and then just kind of jumped and landed and traveled. They had a few bad, things that you often see teams that are getting sped up make mistakes, but it wasn't nearly as many as McNeese. And when they did make those mistakes, they didn't compound them. The amount of, especially power conference teams that are more athletic, that just have more talent on the roster, when they start to make a run on you, most teams fold. Most teams that know that they're mid-majors or know that they're maybe not going to be able to compete, you see them fold. This team did not fold. That makes me extremely excited about seeing what they can do against a Texas Tech in the next round. And even like in the future under Ben McCollum, depending how long he stays at this program, the more wins they get here, the less likely he's going to be there for very long. But this team was poised. They were in control. The fact that half of these guys were at the Division II level last year, and here they are hanging tight against an SEC team that was ranked in the top 10 this year and still getting a W, like that's really impressive stuff. I came away really liking what I saw from Ben McCollum's team, from Bennett Sturts, and from the rest of the guys for stepping up. When Missouri was locked in on Sturts, they found ways to get this thing done.
Andy, congrats to both of these teams. There is one other lower seeded team that won on Thursday, and it's John Calipari. It's funny to talk about him as a lower seeded team, but it was true in this game. The Bill Self, John Calipari matchup did not disappoint whatsoever, with Coach Cal and the Hogs moving on while Kansas' season came to an inglorious end. More coming up on that in just a second. But right after I tell you about Nissan, look, we're all about the stats here at Locked On. I'm probably a little too much about the stats, if I'm being honest. I'm in the weeds on it because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, man, you can get quite literally the whole team carried, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. So whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. So go ahead, take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com.
Folks, daylight saving time snuck up on us yet again, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you just need a little boost to power through the day, whether you're staying up late watching NCAA tournament games. Isaac, you and I know plenty about that. Whether you're squeezing in a round of golf after work or you're just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. I've been staying up late covering the NCAA tournament, getting up early to record shows about the NCAA tournament. I'm going to tell you what, 5 Hour Energy is just the jolt that I need to help me going throughout the next day. Whether I'm at a game, whether I'm traveling, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab and helps me keep me feeling refreshed. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. And if you need one now, grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized.
Andy, the lone other game that featured a lower-seeded team winning on Thursday night was, oddly enough, a John Calipari coach team, the number 10 Arkansas Hogserbacks. I like that one, against the number 7-seeded Kansas Jayhawks. And boy, did they get rock chalked in this one. Arkansas wins 79-72. Andy, what a weird thing. The Kansas Jayhawks have made the second weekend of the NCAA tournament now just once in the last 6 tournaments. It was that 2022 national championship game. Per Brian Ives on Twitter, Brian Ives, great producer for ACC Network, he says the Kansas streak of consecutive NCAA tournaments with at least one win is snapped at 17 tournaments. Andy, it brings me no pleasure in letting you know that falls one shy of North Carolina's all-time record of 18 from 1981 to 1998. Well, I mean, it's crazy to think about the Kansas side of this and just where things have been at these past 2 years. And now that's over, like no more Hunter Dickinson, right? Like what on earth? There we are. No more. Is Dwan Harris done? Is he out of eligibility?
I think Dwan Harris is done too. Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it appeared we don't know the final result as we record here, but it sure did look like KJ Adams popped an Achilles there right towards the end. Really, just broken for that dude if that's what that is. But non-contact, he's grabbing at the back of his ankle, needs people to help him, and so I think that's probably where that's at. But Andy, how about these Hogs? They get Boogie Fland back, no Adu Thiero, and they take it to the Jayhawks, brother. What do you got?
Yeah, what a fun game. And I would point out for any of the Tar Heel fans who are happy, who are like, oh, I'm glad our streak is continuing. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Gonzaga, because they beat Georgia, I believe they are now at 17. So I think if they do, their last time that Gonzaga lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament was to Steph Curry when he was at Davidson, and it was in 2008. So I think, if my math is correct, they're right around there. So somebody's coming for you, North Carolina, if it's not going to be Kansas. But yeah, this was
fine, Andy. Just rub it in. Whatever.
It's been more difficult in the last couple of years for Gonzaga, although they didn't make it look too difficult on Thursday. We're going to talk about that.
They did not.
But huge stuff from Arkansas to win this game with Boogie Fland making his first appearance in a couple of months without Adu Thiero, a team that really didn't look like they were going to be an NCAA tournament team for more than half of the season, if we're being honest. They circled the wagons. They found a way. The weirdness of Boogie Fland's injury seeming to make Arkansas better, while that's not taking away from Fland as a player, it did seem to help this team. It seemed to help Calipari. Maybe he's just had too many cooks in the kitchen, but they really found a way to rally around Coach and get some key W's down the stretch of the season. Then they end up getting a bid here where you think, okay, they're a 10 seed that barely snuck into the tournament going up against the team that was the preseason number 1, and they're doing it without arguably their best player, Adu Thiero, and one of their best players playing his first game in months. And yet here they go. They go out and get themselves a nice W. And it was not super pretty. In fact, I think that an entire media timeout in whatever game was going on concurrently with this one, there was an entire media timeout between two different timeouts where I'm pretty sure all that happened in the Arkansas game was that Boogie Fland called 3 timeouts while trying to inbound the basketball with 12 seconds left.
Good grief! What do you expect when I got a great idea, Andy? Go with me if you think this is a smart thing from Coach Cal. Mm-hmm. Why don't we? Let our freshmen inbound the ball at maybe the most important juncture of this game. The guy who not only is a freshman but hasn't played in 2 months. Let's let him throw it in and forget that he can run the baseline. That's wonderful.
I'm confused by the decision to have him do it in the first place, but I am mystified by the decision to keep him inbounding it after the first time. Like he called that first time out like 2 seconds into the 5 seconds that he had without taking a single step. How on earth in that timeout it wasn't communicated to him, okay, take 4.5 seconds next time and also run up and down the baseline, and he still didn't do it. It was just the strangest thing. No hate to Boogie whatsoever. I thought it was an odd decision.
That's on Coach Cal. That's on Cal, man. Absolutely.
I think that's and Cal. He kind of alluded to it after the game in a joking manner, as he does about that whole situation. But he was in a good mood because at the end of the day, this team still won. Kansas. What a mess of a season this was for Bill Self's team. A team that last year lost early in the tournament as well. They did win a game before losing to Gonzaga, but then Bill Self basically said, I've been thinking about next season for the last month, which did not exactly win him a lot of fans by saying that. And then he goes out and has this monstrous transfer portal offseason, gets really big players into the program. It's AJ Storr, Rylan Griffin comes in, Diggy Coit, Zeke Mayo, like all these big names. They get back Dickinson and Harris and KJ Adams. Everybody thinks, okay, they're the preseason number 1 for a reason. And then kind of the same things happen. Like this team didn't ever really gel. Storr never really found his role. He'd have games occasionally that were good, but honestly, just the Hunter Dickinson era was just not good. And this game in particular, in the second half, Dickinson was not good. And they played when Kansas played Dickinson, when he came back into the game was when the things started going worse for them. Dickinson's a good basketball player. I'm not saying that he is bad, but he didn't help this team win nearly as often over the last 2 years as I think the expectation would have that people would have expected him to. And this game was a perfect example of, like, doesn't matter what he did or didn't do, Kansas wasn't as good with him on the floor as they were without him on the floor. I'm curious if a reset after this era will kind of get Bill Self and Kansas back on track, because this has been a pretty disastrous couple of years.
The commentators literally said, I wrote it down because I was so shocked. Quote, when's the last time Hunter Dickinson did something? I mean, like, that's what they said on air, Andy. Like, what are we talking? Kansas committed so many turnovers down the stretch of this. It was befuddling to me. Like, this is Juwan Harris just like trying to throw an entry pass and just like,
yeah,
here you go, Jonas, or whoever it was. Yeah. But I mean, good grief, dude. That was crazy. It's weird to me. Zvonimir Avicic has basically been relegated to nothingness. Played 4 minutes in this game. But kind of the flip. Remember earlier this season, we're like, where's Jonas Adu? Now here you go. 22 points in this game. Took the most field goal attempts for Arkansas. That's fun to see. As for Boogie, he wound up playing 24 minutes, had 6 points. So that's good, in terms of how many minutes he's able to get out there. But it's good to see him come back, and Nelly Davis still pouring in 18. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're looking for here.
And I would point out with Fland too, he's a phenomenal defensive player. His point of attack defense is unbelievably good. He made some great plays in this game. Like, he didn't have a great offensive game. We poked fun at him for the passing, but that dude absolutely brings it on the defensive end. And I think they're gonna be happy he's around, especially against St. John's on Saturday.
Yeah. Andy, I believe this was my favorite game of the day in terms of we didn't get any buzzer beaters. We didn't get any last minute shots or anything like that. But this was just a really fun, tight back and forth, lots of lead change kind of game between these two national champion coaches. It was a blast. Andy, we had 2 8 and 9 games that I guess we now need to speed through because we've just been verbose everywhere else. But we had Gonzaga and Georgia, the Bulldog action. And then we had the first tip of the day, Louisville against Creighton in the South region. And Andy, the Gonzaga Georgia game gave to us what I thought was the most single impressive thing I saw all day long. And that was Gonzaga starting this game with a 13-0 run, which then extended, it was 27-3, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yep.
I just, what? Yeah. That's the craziest thing I've seen in the tournament since probably UConn's 30-0 run on Illinois last year. It was insane, and Gonzaga, one of the things that gets talked about with this team a lot is that the WCC tournament is one of the first tournaments that's done. So very often Gonzaga comes into the field having not played for, in this case, it was 9 days. That's pretty typical for them, 9 or 10 days off. Now, Georgia lost early in the SEC tournament, so they'd actually, I think Gonzaga was on a 9-day gap and Georgia was on an 8-day gap. So they were fairly similar, but one team looked ready for this basketball game to start and the other team really never did. I know the score was 41-41 in the second half, but Georgia was never even remotely in this basketball game. It was honestly shocking how unprepared they seemed for what Gonzaga was doing. Gonzaga, their intensity on defense was good, and they made threes, which they haven't done. They've made 1 3 in the WCC championship game. They made, I think, 12 in this game. So yeah, you maybe weren't expecting that, but Georgia wasn't contesting the threes that Gonzaga was taking. It was a bafflingly ugly performance from Georgia. Asa Newell was great. The rest of the team just really did not bring it. I thought the coaching was not good for Georgia, but Gonzaga looked absolutely fantastic. Nolan Hickman made it very clear he does not want his college basketball career to end in a first-round loss. Same with Caleb Battle, his only time in the NCAA tournament in his career, and he was like, I'm not only going to play one game in the Big Dance. And he dropped 24 points. He had one of the most acrobatic finishes I've ever seen, a little up and under with some English on it that was beautiful. This was a really fun basketball game. I know most people think, I want the 8-9s to be close games. This was not a close game, and frankly, neither was Creighton Louisville, which we'll get to in a second. But if you're a fan of the Blue Jays and the Bulldogs, you were quite happy with the results that those two teams delivered on Thursday. Yeah. Andy, let's go to the other game where, holy Jemiah Neal, dude. This is a game where we're looking at all these other players, right? We're looking at Chucky Hepburn. We're looking at Cockbrenner. We're looking at Ashworth and all this stuff. And then this man, Jemiah Neal, comes out here, drops 29 on 11 of 16, 2 of 5 from deep, 5 of 9 from the free throw line. That's the blemish. But it's a dub. He had 12 boards to go along with it, 6 assists, 2 turnovers, and a block. And, you had Ashworth filling it up. He had 22, all this stuff. Yeah. But my goodness, dude, 5 straight tournaments where Greg McDermott's Blue Jays have won at least one game, not quite into the level that who were we joking about? I've already forgotten.
Gonzaga last loss was to Steph Curry.
Yes, that whole thing. So Creighton's working on their own streak there, but man, crazy stuff from Creighton. But Andy, here's what it is to me. Louisville, like we've got to stand and applaud them for what a crazy turnaround from the previous 2 seasons. I mean, it's so good to see them be back. But man, they just didn't show up enough for this game, similar to Georgia. But here was the issue for me. They're making this run. They get it down to 12 with about 4:45 to go. Pat Kelsey had been upset for a little while. And then inexplicably decides he wants to get teed up the way you do when you're trying to inspire your team.
Yep.
The problem was there wasn't enough time left in this game for it to be inspiration, but there wasn't enough time left for it to stop all the momentum Louisville had just built up. And it made absolutely no sense to me. It felt out of control. It felt undisciplined, and it felt not what Pat Kelsey usually does. I didn't get it for him, man. And I'm not going to dump on him all over because it's like, I think Pat Kelsey is a great coach. I just thought this was a bad decision in the moment.
Yeah, he was fired up. He was really hot. It was strange. It was a little odd. I think he maybe just feeling the weight of the gravity of the situation and the game slipping away, whatever it may have been. But you could be frustrated at him in the moment if you're a Louisville fan. I think a lot of them probably are. But also, you're kind of playing with house money for how the season went for Louisville. I think they already came into this game feeling like they were a little underseeded. And we talked about it a bunch of like, I felt that Louisville was underseeded, but I also felt they had a terrible matchup against Creighton. And we can go back and find it. I'm pretty sure I said, I think Louisville's going to lose to Creighton. And that doesn't mean that they were actually correctly seeded or that they were overseeded. It just means that they drew a really crappy matchup and we're going to struggle to deal with what we thought was going to be Ryan Kalkbrenner, what ultimately ended up being Jemiah Neal, who's basically just a 6'7" wrecking ball of a man who was able to just get to the rim. And I mean, he's not a great 3-point shooter. He's not a great free throw shooter, but man, he is an absolute load. And he played really, really well in this game for Creighton. If he's playing like that, this Creighton team, they absolutely have a chance to take down Auburn. I'm really excited about that basketball game. Auburn's been stumbling. They were the 1 seed that I think looked the worst. Only 2 1 seeds played on Thursday, and the other one was Houston, who nearly doubled up their opponents. So that's maybe a little bit unfair.
Technically, you're not wrong.
It's true. I think I'd argue that Auburn's the top 3 seed that played the worst on Thursday, especially in the first half. They figured it out. But
and save that for our superlatives coming up. Don't give away the farm.
We'll do it. Let's do it.
Fine. We got a whole bunch of superlatives for you. We're going to get to which top seeded teams inspired confidence in us on Thursday, which ones didn't, plus a look ahead to some of Friday and Saturday's action, all coming up in just a second.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Andy, it was a glorious, glorious first full day of the tournament. 16 wonderful games. We got 16 more today on Friday. It's so good. We got half of the second round set, but we got to get the rest done. We got 5 superlatives we want to talk through here in our last segment. A couple look backs, a couple look parallels to today, I don't know, and a couple look forwards to tomorrow, Saturday. So let's start here, Andy. We got to be quick on these. 1 through 3 seed, we felt most confident about after Thursday's action.
I thought about this for a while. I'm actually going to go with St. John's, which is funny because they were down 7-0 and kind of let Omaha hang around with them for a while. But the reason they're on here is simple. The main issue I had with St. John's was the lack of 3-point shooting. They drilled 14 threes. Yes, it's Omaha, but they made 14 threes. To me, that makes me feel a lot more confident about St. John's. Having said that, that game with Arkansas, that's going to be a really fun one.
It is, man. I'm Houston. Enough said. Like, okay. The 1 through 3 seed we feel least confident about following Thursday's action.
Yep, Auburn. I already gave that one away, but I'm going to say it again. They didn't look good in the first half against Alabama State. They lost 3 of their last 4 games coming in. They're playing a Creighton team that I think matches up decently well against them. Can we just talk about the fact that we're going to get Janai Broom versus Ryan Kalkbrenner? That is going to be incredibly fun basketball on Saturday. I think Auburn's still the favorite. I think they're still going to probably win this one, but it's hard to feel super confident in them after what we've seen from them the last few weeks.
Plus or minus 6.5 combined blocks between those two. Andy, the team I'm going with for at least confident about is Wisconsin. This is a team that had lost 3 of 5 coming into the Big Ten tournament. They won 3 straight, got all the way to the championship game, should have won it, let Michigan come back and win it, confoundingly to me. And then, like, they ended up, like, beating Montana. I think it was by 19 when it was all said and done here, right? But I just eye testy for me. I was like,
yeah.
And so it's like the combination of they hadn't been instilling confidence. I didn't feel it on Thursday. And combine that with the fact that they're on Saturday going to play a BYU team that I thought looked great. And they're playing in Denver at elevation, as we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And all that leads me to say I'm out on Wisconsin. I think BYU is going to win that basketball game. Andy, number 3 superlative. A 4 seed or lower that we are most confident about following Thursday's action.
Yeah, I'm going with the UCLA Bruins. Shout outs to the McBruins, 7 seed. They dominated Utah State. 72-47 was the final score here. Maybe the takeaway should be, why on earth are we ever trusting Mountain West teams again? San Diego State got walloped by North Carolina. Now Utah State takes a loss here. I know New Mexico.
Both by 25 plus points. That's insane.
25-point losses for the Mountain West schools. Yikes. We got Colorado State taking on Memphis and New Mexico taking on Marquette on Friday. We'll see if that conference can get a boost here. But no, this was a really good performance from Mick Cronin's team. They looked really comfortable. They scored a ton of points in the second half in particular. Just a nice game from a team that I think is really going to give Tennessee a run for their money on Saturday.
Andy, I'm with you. And then my other one, I just said it a minute ago, but is BYU. And it's funny how they now line up with Wisconsin. All right, now we look ahead to 2 Saturday things. We've got no, I'm sorry. Yes, no. Andy, I've just completely lost my. Okay, yes, Saturday. The matchup for Saturday that we are most excited about. So the round of 32 that is already set that we're most excited and looking forward to.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Gonzaga Houston. 1 seed versus an 8 seed. These are both teams that have Sweet 16 streaks of 5 or more seasons in a row. Gonzaga's 9 years in a row. They've made the Sweet 16. Houston's made the Sweet 16 5 years in a row. One of those streaks is going to end because these two teams are playing each other in the round of 32. Again, it feels like an Elite 8 matchup. Mark Few, Kelvin Sampson both have 700-plus career wins. I'm really excited to see so much of Gonzaga's success lately has been predicated by their size. They have a size advantage on Houston, but Houston has not let teams having a size advantage stop them from out-physicaling them and out-rebounding them. I'm curious to see if Gonzaga can handle that, what it looks like on Saturday. That's going to be a really fun one.
Yep, Andy, I am going with I can't decide between these two. Arkansas St. John's, for all the same reasons of Arkansas Kansas, right? Like it, but now it's Patino and Cal, two guys that have both won a national championship at Kentucky. This game's played in Providence. I mean, it's just
the only 2 Italian mobsters left still coaching college basketball.
and then we get for those who might not be aware, we're gonna have this Drake Texas Tech matchup, and you're like, okay, so what? Texas Tech's probably gonna slaughter them. Maybe we'll get Chance McMillan back. We don't know. Well, a little fun fact about this is Grant McCaslin and Ben McCollum, Drake's coach, are actually friends. McCaslin had tried really hard to get Ben McCollum to come to his staff. McCollum wanted to be a head coach, so he took the Drake job. Drake came to Texas Tech, to Lubbock, to scrimmage back in October. Texas Tech wins that, and then they all just stayed around for an extra day and just shared basketball, talked basketball and stuff. And now, of course, as always, storylines go, these two dudes are now squaring off, these good friends here in the round of 32. So that should be a really interesting chess match between good buddies. Andy, let's pull it back to Friday, to today. We've got our 4 windows of 4 games each. So first 2 windows, first 8 games today. What is the game you are most excited about and looking forward to?
Well, I want to see if a Mountain West team can get a W. So the one I'm picking is 12 seed Colorado State taking on 5 seed Memphis. Games at 2 Eastern time on TBS. in the West region in Seattle. FanDuel actually does favor the Rams by 1.5 points over the 5 seed Memphis. I thought Memphis was a bit overseeded, so I'm interested to see how this game plays out. It's going to be a battle between Nate Clifford and PJ Haggerty, two of the best players in college basketball, bar none. Really, really fun to see Nate Clifford. If you haven't watched Colorado State yet, highly recommend checking this one out. There's plenty of storylines playing out in this one, and the storylines as well as the talent that these two teams have on their roster should make this a really fun game.
Andy, oddly enough, my game in the first two windows is also a game in which the lower seeded team is favored. In fact, these are the only two games of the first round where the lower seed is the favorite. So this is North Carolina, the 11 seed coming out of the play-in round, facing off against Chris Beard's Ole Miss Rebels, the 6th seed out of the South region. And again, FanDuel has it North Carolina by 1.5. This is really intriguing because you got the Chris Beard, no middles defense against a Carolina team that's trying to drive. Elliot Cadeau wants to get into the middle. How can Carolina, can they utilize Jalen Withers to hit some of those corner threes while we got this Ole Miss team that has 6 players averaging double figures? Andy Patton should be a real, I don't know what to make of this game, if I'm being very honest with you, but I'm excited about it, and that's why it's on my list. All right, Andy, last one. The matchup we're excited about mostly, that we're most excited about in the last two windows of Friday's action. Who you got?
Yeah, I'm going with the 8-9 matchup here, Oklahoma versus UConn. What a weird matchup we're getting here on the 8-9 line, an Oklahoma team that, most people didn't think was going to make the NCAA tournament. For most of the season, obviously, they did enough to get there, especially after beating Georgia in the SEC tournament, versus the back-to-back defending national champions in the UConn Huskies. Just not two teams you expected to square off this at this stage in the tournament. This game's at 9:25 p.m. Eastern time on TNT in the West region in Raleigh. UConn favored by 5.5. I'm interested to see how UConn defends Jeremiah Fears, because he is so electric with the basketball in his hands. He can break down teams by his ability to get to the free throw line. He's a high-level scorer. UConn, not a good defensive team. If Aiden Mahaney is out there defending Jeremiah Fears at any point, this is going to be very problematic for the UConn Huskies. But obviously with the way that Liam McNeely's played now that he's healthy, and with Alex Caravan, this UConn team's got enough offensive firepower to win this one. I'm just interested to see how it plays out. I'm expecting UConn to win, and honestly, I'm expecting them to cover. But I'm interested to see the Jeremiah Fears element of it all. I think it makes this an interesting game.
And this could make or break any possibility of a three-peat.
Yeah.
So there's that. Andy, funnily enough, my game I'm choosing here is the other play-in game at-large team, the Xavier Musketeers, and Sean Miller, who just knocked out the team that he's probably going to be coaching next year, is taking on the 6th seed Illinois here in the Midwest bracket in Milwaukee, actually in the same building right after the game that I just talked about. This one's really interesting to me. And by the way, with a nod to New Mexico and Marquette, that was the other game I was looking at. But we've got Ryan Conwell, who's just been going nuclear for Xavier lately. Zach Freemantle doing his best. Ryan Kalkbrenner impression. It feels like these two big men have been in the Big East together for approximately the last 18 years, Andy.
Yeah, since Patino was there originally.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Good grief. And then you got the Illinois stable of freshmen. You got Kaspers Yakichonis. You've got, we talked about Zvonimir Ivicic earlier in the show. His brother Tomislav plays for this Illinois team, as well as Will Riley. And these three freshmen are the leading scorers for this team. Morez Johnson probably coming back. I'm actually not sure. I need to check in on his availability for this game. But all this stuff. And I think, Andy, that Kylan Boswell plays a critically important role for this team in terms of being an upperclassman that can really help shepherd and usher along these freshmen.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that game as well. We do have an update on the Grant Nelson situation for Alabama. We've been hearing some rumors about his injury, something that could play a significant impact on Friday's slate. Rothstein says per Nate Oates that he is questionable. So it's an update that's a non-update. We don't really know as of right now the actual status for Grant Nelson, but certainly something to keep a very close eye on for Alabama, not just in their first game, but going forward. If he's not able to play when they get into the round of 32, Sweet 16, it could be a significant issue for the Crimson Tide. Yeah. I think that's going to do it for us today, though, here on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. So much fun that we're actually here talking about NCAA tournament games, not just previewing them, not just talking about speculative seeds, speculative matchups. We have this thing down. We got 16 more games on Friday, and then we got more games Saturday and Sunday. Before you know it, we will be back in Dallas with the bracket breakdown, talking about the 16 teams remaining in the NCAA tournament. I am so excited to get to all of that coming up here very soon. But folks, that is going to wrap it up for us today. We want to say, as always, apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the McBruins, especially after their big win. And until Friday night, when we record after all the games, peace out.